Well, hello everyone, and we are here today for a Google Hangout on air. My very special guest with BlogPaws today is Dr. Patrick Mahaney, and many of you will know Dr. Patrick from seeing him at the BlogPaws conferences. But if you are unaware of who he is, he's a pet industry expert, a fellow colleague, but also someone who's, I think you've attended most BlogPaws conferences and you've actually spoken there. And what most notably, Dr. Mahaney's terrier Cardiff has been afflicted with some health issues, but he's thriving, both the doctor and his pet. So today we're going to be talking with him in celebration of Aging Pet Appreciation Month at BlogPaws. We'll be talking with him about the human-animal bond and some pet health safety issues. So this is a really exciting time for us. Hello, Dr. Patrick, and welcome.
Hi, Carol. This is actually my first Hangout I've been able to attend or even be part of in this way, so I'm excited to be here.
Oh, great, great. And looking good as always. So hello to everyone who's just meeting Dr. Patrick. One of the things I wanted to start out with is this human-animal bond. I know anyone listening, either live or on the recorded version, we form a bond with our pets. The human-animal bond is actually something that's now an official nonprofit organization, HABRI. And BlogPaws brought HABRI to the conference this year in Vegas. And one of the speakers, if anyone was there, was Dr. Kate Hodgson, who spoke so eloquently about a topic and a word that I still have a difficult time pronouncing, but has so much meaning in the life of a pet parent, and that is Zooey. So what is Zooey, and tell us a little bit more about that.
It's interesting for me to go to conferences like this as well because there's always such an opportunity to learn and network. But then I get to learn new things myself that I can incorporate into my writing and apply to my veterinary practice. And so, of course, we veterinarians are always very focused on making sure that our patients are as healthy as possible, so that our pet parents are happy as well. Because needing to put effort into medicating or carrying a dog around or spending money on their care. And so we always want to have the healthiest patients as possible, so our owners are also very happy too. But what I thought was really interesting to learn from Dr. Hodgson about Zooey was or Zooey, because we're going to pronounce it a couple different ways over the next hour, is the actual science that shows how animals benefit people. That we're always, concerned: are we going to get sick from our pet? Are we going to give something to our pet sickness? And that can actually happen too. Those are called zoonotic diseases. Mm-hmm. But what was great was with learning about Zooey from Dr. Hodgson was that there are so many ways that animals actually benefit our pets, and science has proven a variety of ways, which come down to like day-to-day health and lifestyle, that show that having a companion animal, and I think this lecture really was focusing more specifically on companion canines and companion felines, yet of course we could maybe extrapolate to some pocket pets. We have some ferret fans and things like that, so our companion animals really benefit our health as well.
I think that any of the folks that are tuning in, anyone coming to the conferences, whether you're a rabbit parent or a snake or fish or birds, the benefit of the pets on human longevity and just our overall well-being, it's just something that I would think you could fill a library full of books with the research on that sort of thing. And so was Zooey something you first found out about at BlogPaws?
Yes, and actually it all started with this past spring. I attended a lecture at UCLA. I live pretty close to the campus, and I'm one of their extension lecturers. So there was an interesting lecture I went there called Zoobiquity, which is probably something that we in the pet community have heard of. It's a book called Zoobiquity that talks about the comparisons between what happens in animal bodies to human bodies, because a lot of human medical practitioners don't really care that much about what happens in animals, yet they're shocked when they learn that animals develop cancer or some of the same problems that humans develop. So that kind of first got me thinking about the whole relationship between human health and animal health, and then in attending BlogPaws, learning about Zooey from Dr. Hodgson. And I think really kind of one of the things that she started off with, which resonates with me so much because I really see this cause and effect relationship with my patients, is then when you have a pet that lives in a smoking household, they are so much more likely to develop a variety of health problems. as compared to pets that live in non-smoking households. And it's completely preventable. It's
Wow.
really actually sad for me as a practitioner to see an owner bring their pet in and then to through the diagnostic process learn that this animal has cancer, or they have asthma, or they have severe irritation of their respiratory tract or eyes as a result of the owner smoking in the household and spewing toxic fumes directly out of them, or
Wow.
leaving those toxic substances all over the surfaces on which the pets walk, and then they lick themselves or
Yeah,
they
I was
lick
going to
the
say when they're
ground.
grooming themselves, that's got to be
Yeah.
something. Ugh. Hmm.
So many times when I've done emergency practice, I've had, say, like, and I live in West Hollywood. There's a big Russian community there, and a lot of these Russians smoke, and so they bring in their cat that's huffing and puffing, can barely breathe, and the cat
Ugh.
reeks of smoke, and they develop feline allergic bronchitis or feline asthma as a direct result of their owner's habits. And so that's where we really have to think about the health habits we have and how they directly affect our pet. And smoking is certainly one of the ones that was very focused on by Dr. Hodson, and showing that people who learn that the negative effects smoking has on pets are more prone to stop smoking and to continue to not smoke, or at least smoke less, which I think is a really powerful piece of information. The research from Habry actually showed that that was the case, because unfortunately, not just asthma, but cancer is a big problem in pets. And it's not just lung cancer, which they do get. They get lung cancers called adenomas or adenocarcinomas. The
Hmm.
carcinoma is malignant. But a lot of dogs and cats that live in smoking households develop lymphoma in their intestines because they're grooming themselves every day, or they're licking the surfaces where the smoke is, and so they're going to develop they're going to ingest these carcinogens and potentially develop lymphoma from it, and that's been proven.
So the presence of the pet in the person's life should really prompt that person that they should quit smoking and just taking care of themselves, but just as a benefit to their pet. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we have all these animals that live with us constantly, and if we have these bad habits, they're going to directly affect our children, our other family members, the people who live in the building or the apartment next to you with the baby,
Hmm.
or the pets that are in your household. So just by having that companion animal in your home, if somebody like the veterinarian tells you, the owner, that your habits are affecting your pet, you're more likely to stop. And this also
Hmm.
actually helps to really bring the veterinarian into the conversation a little bit more, because you should never let your clients get away with habits that are potentially affecting your pet's health, your patient's health negatively. You have to not be afraid to step up and say, you're overfeeding your pet, you're smoking around your pet, and it's causing your pet problems. Your home is hurting your pet.
Hmm.
If these things keep on happening again and again, the pet is going to get sicker or they're going to die.
And beyond,
That's
and
the long
so
and the short of it.
yeah, and beyond the smoking and healthy lifestyle choices, I know when I'm around you, you're a very physical guy. We even walk blocks and blocks together in New York City to grab lunch, so I know to expect movement when we're together.
Yahoo!
Um, exercise, so important. We have such an obesity crisis in this country with our pets, but can you speak a little bit about the human-animal bond and healthy lifestyle choices and why that's important for our pets as well?
Absolutely. So obesity, well, being overweight or obese is certainly harmful to the body in a variety of ways. And so I just want to kind of focus on the importance that the body is slimmer for both people and for animals. Larger bodies have more stress on all organ systems. I think a lot of people always think about what happens when a person gets very heavy. Very often they develop diabetes. That very similar things happen in animals as well, more specifically with cats. Cats have diabetes called type 2 diabetes, where as a result of the body tissues getting larger, there's not enough insulin that's produced by the pancreas to help to take sugar out of the blood into the tissue so it can be used to fire all our muscles and our bodies can normally function. So what happens is, as a result of the pet food industry, and more specifically dry foods, which get overfed, animals develop, especially cats develop obesity, and they outgrow their own supply ability to produce insulin. So we, the owners, have to then start injecting insulin into our cats, once a day, twice a day. It's a complicated process, and it involves you giving those injections. And it's expensive to purchase that insulin. It's expensive to monitor blood sugar, and even more expensive when there's a overdose of insulin and the pet crashes and you have to go to the emergency hospital and hospitalize them and treat them. So keeping your cat slim and restricting their calories throughout their life is so important so that you can hopefully not have these problems as time goes by. Besides metabolic diseases like diabetes, of course, just that extra weight on the body puts a lot of stress on the joints. So heavier pets are more prone to developing arthritis, more prone to having traumatic injuries like cruciate ligament tears, which I know Dexter has gone through some in his life, and that's just sometimes a genetic thing too. Or certainly all that stress on other organs like the heart and lungs. And so just by being heavier, you're affecting all your organs in a negative way. And fortunately, we have organizations like the APOP, the Association for Pet Obesity Prevention, which gives people like myself and the general pet population helpful statistics that really show the trends of what's happening in pets. And unfortunately, as people are getting larger, pets are getting larger too. Over 50% of animals in this country are overweight or obese, and that's 90 million dogs and cats, and it's a completely preventable disease. And so it all comes down to the calories we consume. We always should try to consume less. The format of the food that we consume, we should always try to eat whole food diets over processed foods, and we should always make some time to exercise with our pets every single day. If you have an indoor cat, putting their food on the opposite end of the house so they have to go get it, just feeding one little piece of dry food if you're feeding dry food at a time, or putting it in a toy where they have to get it out.
Is that obesity organization that you just mentioned online that folks can reference
absolutely.
that?
Yeah, the Association for Pet Obesity Prevention, APOP.
Okay.
A guy named Dr. Ernie Ward kind of headlines that, and he is involved with the research and the statistical gathering. It's important. I actually, like, every year, if I'm writing about obesity and prevention, I always update it, because every year pets are more millions of pets are being deemed overweight or obese.
And it's so easy for your pet to be overweight, and I've heard people say to me, and it happened to myself, taking my dog to the vet and being told your pet needs to lose a little weight isn't pleasant, but why aren't more veterinarians, Yvonne specifically from BlogPaws wants to know, why aren't more veterinarians talking to their clients about this really important life-saving topic?
It is something that we vets have to, again, step up to the plate and be willing to say, because it is asking the owner to change their lifestyle so that their pets will be healthier. And so that might mean the dog owner is then having to actually get out of the house and take their dog for the walk. But what they might start to notice, and this is what we learned in the Zooey talk, is that when we're making these lifestyle choices for pets, we ourselves might be happier and healthier too. There was a study that was referenced from Dr. Hodson, the People and Pets Exercising Together study, which I've referenced a couple times in articles that I've written, that shows that people who chose to do some kind of activity with their pet tended to stay with that activity for longer, and therefore had more health benefits resulting from it. So people who chose to go for that walk with their pet developed enjoyment of doing so, and they're more willing to continue to do so on a regular basis. Because not only is it just the exercise, but when they're out on a walk, they might see their neighbors and have social interaction with their neighbors, and then maybe plan some other kind of activity. So it generally leads to a healthier lifestyle, both for the pet and for the person. And so so within the lecture, it was the reference of the People and Pets Exercising Together study, or PPET study.
Got it. I think that's such an interesting point that you make, because I know more people and their pets because of my pet. It's just a genuine conversation starter, and there are people who walk their cats. I have friends who have ferrets who go for walks, and so it's it's not just exclusive to canines. And this leads me into my next topic with managing stress, anxiety, or depression. Especially in a time where we're hearing so much about emotional support animals and just what our pets can do for us and our well-being in general. Could you talk about Zooey and a little bit about the presence of a pet in the household and how that can help the person stay more positive in life in general?
Sure. I mean, I think we are such busy people at this point. We also tend to be more isolated as well. I think as a result of the wonderful things that come out of having a computer, we now can just sit at home, and that can be our whole socialization, so we might not get out and about as much. So people are leading leading more isolated lives. In general, I think there's less pressure on people to have children, and so they might just be by themselves a little bit more as compared to having a family that they're constantly having to do things or get out of the house with. And so it could lead to people just being a little bit more individual and isolated. So certainly having that pet, if you don't have a significant other or child around that you're constantly attending to, having that pet to attend to gives you some focus and maybe some direction in your life as compared to, say, just being sad because you don't have all the things that you potentially want to have. So if you have that pet to take care of, it is very similar to having a child to take care of. So it gives you some direction, and the pet also is always happy to see you when you get home, as compared to maybe that child or that spouse that isn't so crazy about you.
It's the old hug the spouse and pet the dog, and who do you go to first when you get home?
Exactly. Who do you snuggle with for? The pet, usually. So having that companion animal around just gives you that kind of feedback that you're looking for, that satisfaction from having some kind of social interaction. And more specifically, Dr. Hodson referenced a study from Hypertension magazine that specifically said pets provide non-judgmental social support intervention that buffers pathogenic responses to stress. So what that basically means is that when we get home and we see our pet and we have this positive social interaction with them, we might be then less inclined to kind of participate in a bad habit that we would otherwise use to manage our stress, like chewing our nails or lighting up that cigarette or having a cocktail or something like that. We're choosing this kind of external thing to maybe make us feel better. We're then going to rely more on the interactions that we have with our pets, and those provide us with really good feelings that don't have any harm to them.
Well, for the pet bloggers and bloggers in general who are listening to this is the kind of information we can incorporate into blog posts. There's so much you're giving here other than the practical nature and knowing, how this information could benefit us and our pets. Where can people go? Do you write about this sort of thing? I'd love to be able to reference your articles. As a blogger, that's something, if you're listening, you definitely should be doing, is outside of opinion or your own personal experiences, it's infusing it with facts, such as Dr. Patrick is talking about here. So if people wanted to reference some of the things you're talking about, where would some of those links, articles, and that sort of thing be? And I'll write about this in a blog post for BlogPaws, but if you want to touch on that a little bit.
Sure. So one of the main places that I write for is Pet MD's The Daily Vet. Myself and 5 other veterinarians, including Dr. Lori Houston, who we know and love from BlogPaws, contribute articles weekly, and they're released on a daily basis. And so you can have them emailed directly to you. There's a Twitter and a Facebook feed. So my Daily Vet page, if you were just to type in your search tool, Dr. Patrick Mahaney, Pet MD, The Daily Vet, you would be able to see my page. And actually what I do is I then take the articles and put them on my own website. So you can always find it on patrickmahaney.com as well in the Pet MD section. But you actually brought up a really good point. Like I love going to BlogPaws. It's always such a great place to network. And I learned so much. Like as soon as I sat down in this lecture, I'm like, this is an article right here. Right. And what it did for me was it also legitimized some of the things I've been speaking about and things before. There's fact. And then there was a wonderful handout that helped me to get the links to what I wanted to more specifically write about. So I'm sitting there in lecture, and that article is already starting to form, and I already started to get the basis of it. So it was so helpful in that way.
And what I'll do when I write my follow-up post about our hangout together is I will reference that particular session at BlogPaws, and we have video. That entire session was recorded, so I'll make sure that folks who missed out on that was definitely a well-orchestrated session, and one that I think a lot of us got, especially a medical professional like yourself. You took a lot away from that, and I know Zooey in general has benefited your dog personally and my dog personally. So can you speak a little bit? Cardiff is such a role model, and for folks who don't know, maybe you could talk about your dog and why I brought him up.
Sure, he's here, but he's in another room. I can always step away and grab him if you want me to, but so Cardiff is a Welsh Terrier. He's 9 years old. In fact, you want me to just grab him really quickly?
Yeah, go ahead, and I'll do a song and dance while you're gone.
Okay.
Yeah. So while Dr. Patrick goes to get Cardiff, his dog actually has cancer, and he has an immune disorder, and usually this is a death sentence for many pets. But through what Patrick has been able to do, and these are typical everyday things that you can incorporate into your life as well, his dog is in remission. And this is a 9-year-old dog that if you've met him, or you'll see him shortly, he doesn't look a day over maybe 2. and he's been able to handle this journey. He's so very inspiring. He's written about it, and even for myself with my dog Dexter, he's gone through 2 surgeries in 1 year, and I know just the amount of knowledge I've gained. I've been able to bring that back to pet blogging and put that on my blog, and to this day, that's one of my most popular posts where traffic goes. So you should remember that is if you are experiencing something in your own life with your own pet, and it's a minor crisis or a major one like I had, blog about it, talk to experts about it. And I didn't plan for that post to be the most popular, but my dog's leg surgeries are. And right on time, Dr. Patrick is sitting back down at his computer, so I'll wait till he's getting hooked up. And I see you brought a bundle of cuteness back with you. Here we are. Okay, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I'm just going to try to adjust the screen a little so you can see him
so that we can see
better.
Mr. Cuteness. Okay, so go. I'll let you talk about Cardiff. I gave a little overview.
Who's this, Cardi? Who's that? Cardi, who's that? There he is.
Cardi Cam.
Oh, Cardi, who's that? Who's that? Look. So Cardiff is a 9-year-old Welsh Terrier. He is a survivor of a usually fatal immune system disease called immune-mediated hemolytic anemia, where basically his body attacks his own red blood cells, and it makes his red blood cell level go down. We have to suppress it with steroids and other drugs and give blood transfusions. It's often a fatal disease because people catch it late, and it can be very challenging to treat from a time perspective, from a financial perspective. He's had it 3 times in his life, with the last being in 2009, and then this past fall he developed lymphoma, which is a malignant white blood cell cancer, and it started as a little tiny loop of a tumor on a loop of intestine, which was surgically removed, which basically cured it because no other tissues were affected at the time, and then he got 6 months of chemotherapy. And so I used the integrative approach to his treatment where he got nutraceuticals like probiotics and antioxidants to benefit his immune system and Chinese herbs, along with a very specific chemotherapy protocol. And I wrote all about like the trials and hardships, the victories and the hardships on my PetMD blog as well. So Cardiff is a survivor of a lot of horrible things, but just with the right approach, like for you pet owners, having that good relationship with your veterinarian, that open stream of communication, taking your pet in for at least an annual physical examination and whatever diagnostic the vet deems appropriate. I'm a big proponent of blood and urine and fecal testing because that's how you can track what's going on internally. Yet, of course, even sometimes with very normal blood testing like Cardiff had, he had this intestinal tumor, and so we had to look a little bit deeper with x-rays and with an ultrasound. So it's really important to always very closely observe your pet's day-to-day habits, because say they're just not eating as well and that's going on for more than a day or so, there's probably something more severe going on. There always could be something with the food, but there could be something going on internally. So really closely paying attention to the very subtle changes, because sometimes there can be a more serious underlying concern.
And do you believe that there's nothing that can replace that visit with your veterinarian, despite as much that is online and that we can find through search engines? Do you believe that that visit with your vet is pivotal?
Yeah, I think it's really important because they might see things that you don't necessarily see. For example, what we were talking about earlier with pets that are overweight or obese, you might just think your pet looks fine. It looks just like your neighbor's dog. But when you go into your vet, not only do you put the pet on the scale, but your vet's hands go on the pet, and you can give your pet what's called a body condition score. And I always reference the Ohio State University's body condition score chart, which is a 1 through 5 scale. And that tells us, are they at the extreme of thin, the extreme of obesity, or are they somewhere right in between? And then you can figure out a plan to determine how many calories they should consume per day, and then hopefully try to maintain or less than that calorie count so they actually will lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely.
And one of the things, I'm glad to hear you say that, and that's a whole blog topic in and of itself. So for folks listening, Dr. Patrick is such a busy guy, but referencing his articles is really a good way to incorporate a lot of what he's talking about into your own blog posts. Speaking of, since we're doing this particular hangout in August, it's warm here on the East Coast. I'm sure it's warm on the West Coast. keeping pets cool in the heat is such a, no pun intended, hot topic.
Ha ha
And
ha.
our very own Yvonne DeVita penned on her Scratchings and Sniffings blog a post about this recently, and I just, it makes me so upset to see so many pets suffering and people leaving them in cars. But we have 5 minutes left, and I'd love to have you really use that time to talk about pets, heat-related illnesses, and how to keep our pets safe from the heat.
Sure. So heat safety is really important, and it always comes down to thinking ahead to making sure that you're not going to potentially expose your pet to an environment that could be traumatic to their body or potentially fatal as a result of heat. So of course, number one, never leave your pet in a hot car, and actually never leave your pet in a car unobserved, period. Of course, it's a little safer when the weather's cool or when it's cold, because they're just going to get a little cold and maybe they'll have a blanket to keep them warm inside. But there's so often that I've had even my own clients, like they go and go on an errand, they bring their dog with them, they leave them in the car, it's overcast, they park somewhere, they think are in the shade, they come out, it's sunny, the shade is gone, the dog's hot, and they barely get them out in time. There's been a bunch of children that have been stuck in cars and have died this season, so we have to apply the same principles to our pets. So always think ahead. You might get delayed when you're inside that store just doing your errand, and your pet could be there for an extra 15 minutes. You lose your key, you can't get the pet out, all sorts of things can happen. So it might just be best in those occasions that your pet is left at home. But say you're traveling with your pet, and you have to take your pet with you, and you're driving across country or something like that, always make sure that you have plenty of fresh water. I would stop maybe every half an hour, every hour, just to let your pet have some kind of bathroom break so they can get outside and get moving, so they're not just stuck in the car and stressed the entire time. If they are, say, traveling and the whole process is stressful for them, then maybe exercise a little bit more so they sleep very comfortably in the car. But I guess it went back to heat. Like if you're gonna exercise your pet in the heat, making sure you're choosing cooler times of the day, so first thing in the morning and then in the evening after the sun goes down. If it's extremely humid out, maybe choosing a different time, because it's harder for most pets to ventilate once it's humid. And even think about having like a summertime tune-up type exam with your vet to make sure that your pet is healthy enough to do these summertime activities. Because if your pet actually has, say, arthritis or some other type of disease inside them that makes them less healthy and less able to perform, they're going to be much more affected by heat during that process. So always make sure your pet is healthy enough for activity. And actually, we're in Massachusetts now, we're on my parents' lake. Cardiff has a life vest that he wears whenever we're taking him on the boat, on a stand-up paddle, even by the water's edge, because there's always that chance that he might see something and want to go swim out after it, and what if he just fatigues himself a little too much, and then suddenly he's sinking underwater? That you want to just try to foresee the unforeseeable.
I think you have touched on probably 45 different blog topics. I think I'm set for the rest of the month with blog fodder. Why are pets prone to heat-related illness in our final moments here?
That is an awesome question. So pets don't sweat like we humans do. They use their respiratory tract and some of their skin surface, like their nose and their paw pads, to release heat. And so that's why when you see your dog exercising, they pant. They're not sweating, they're releasing that heat through their respiratory tract. And in cats, same thing. Cats, if they get hot, will tend to open mouth, breathe, and pant, which also could mean more serious health problems if it's not heat-related. So as a result of pets not able to cool themselves like we people do through sweating, they're going to have to rely on that respiratory tract to release more heat, and it's just not as efficient of a process. So their temperature is going to be more prone to elevating. And of course, there's a normal range that we have to consider for body temperatures in dogs and cats. It's usually between 100 and 103. But when a pet is in a hot environment, if they're exercising, if they're more affected by some kind of underlying illness, they may not be able to get rid of that heat as well. The body temperature goes up. Hyperthermia develops at some point over 103 or so, and if it keeps going up, it's going to really affect all internal organs. It can cause multiple organ system failure. It can cause your blood to not be able to clot properly. Your pet could ultimately go into a coma and could even die from heat stroke. So it's really important to think ahead, take those breaks during activity, always hydrate your pet really well. Even better, have them eat a food that's already moist so they're eating their food and they're better hydrated. Seek shade every couple minutes if you're doing some kind of outdoor activity. I don't suggest giving your pet ice water just because the very cold nature of ice water can cause the muscles in the stomach and intestines to slow down some. But hydration and cooling is very, very important.
So for more information, if you could just give us a link or two of where folks could find you. This has been one of the
Sure.
best hangouts I've had the pleasure of
Oh.
hosting. So Cardiff, tell Dad to let us know where to find him.
So I'm pretty easy to find. It's just my first and last name together.com, patrickmahaney.com. And that really serves as a place where people can connect to me if they want to potentially have me provide veterinary services for your pet if you're in the greater Los Angeles area. That's also where all my writing gets kind of a feed down for PetMD's Daily Vet, for Pet Liberty News on Pet 360, the writing I do for Honest Kitchen and Vax-A-Check and all those kind
Great.
of things, Pet Safe. So I really kind of, it's the home base for me. That's where you can find everything that I do. And
Great.
all about Cardiff.
And all about Cardiff, yes. If you want to get his whole story, it's definitely something that's changed me, and you're so inspirational and such a resource for the pet community at large. So we want to thank you for being here. And there's also things about you and more on pet health in light of Aging Pet Appreciation Month here at BlogPaws. So folks can go to blogpaws.com, search on different topics in pet health, and we really appreciate you being here. But we're also going to carry this over into our Google Plus community right now. So if anybody wants to stay around and ask Dr. Patrick some questions or give Cardiff a cyber treat, they are absolutely welcome to do so. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and I think that's a wrap.